Well, look, thanks all of you for coming today. We're talking about sexual harassment, sexual violence against women. You all are not immune to it. I'm not immune to it. And I wanted to kick off with the abduction, rape and murder of Sarah Everard this year, because it seemed to me that it lit a touch paper. And what I wanted to start off with really was for all of you, what did that make you reflect on? And I'll start with you, Jess. What did it make you reflect on about your life, your experiences?
My first reflection was how it felt different in the country, for a start off. It felt like, for the first time, women were saying, this has happened to me because of men's behaviour and it's not on me anymore to do anything about it. I mean, it made me reflect on the fact that this is a universal experience that not enough has ever been done about, and women have been expected for too long to just take the burden of it.
It made me feel really angry that the initial response that we were getting was, well, why was she walking alone? Why was she walking after dark? Shouldn't she have been with someone? And yet again, it's this burden of you as the woman have to take the precautions so that you are not the victim of male violence. And that's what really angers me, is that we still aren't addressing, in my view, adequately what are the cultures underpinning this. What makes a man think it is okay to indecently expose himself? What makes him think it's okay to follow a woman home, to catcall in the street? And are these the sort of gateway behaviours that lead to much more horrific crimes?
Yeah. I just think, how have we not fixed this yet? How have we not kind of brought about the change that's needed to stop these things happening? Because it was just so horribly depressing that still these things are happening, and still we haven't made progress.
I have 2 little girls. That sense of pure panic, that what had become so normal for me and my friends was the world that they were growing into.
Do you feel that you have to try and do something now to stop this happening to your daughters, or do you actually think it's inevitable that they're going to get harassment? Is that how you feel?
I signed them up to Muay Thai classes that week because I thought the only way I can protect them as their mum is to help them learn how to defend themselves. That was how bleak I felt about their future. As they get older, I will start to have the conversations about what they do when they walk home. I will be that parent that goes and meets them at the train station, or make sure that I'm hiding somewhere in a car, because that's how I feel. But I also see the sharp end when I work in A&E and I do night shifts, and I see those girls coming in, and it's not nice and it's not okay. And there are teenage girls carrying the cubicle all together because something bad has happened to one of them.
Faye, you were flashed at what, when you were 17 years old?
Yeah, 17, 18, yeah.
And how did that make you feel?
It happened as I was walking towards the restaurant to pick my dad up, and then I saw my dad straight away, and I couldn't talk to him about it. We just drove home in silence.
You didn't tell him?
I did later, but I was really nervous about telling him. I don't know why, I just felt so ashamed. Just really, did I do something? Did I bring that on? I mean, what was I, did I cause that? And I just didn't know how to tell my dad that had happened to me, because I felt responsible for it.
You had a similar experience to that when you were quite a young girl.
Not flashed, but I can remember being on a school trip to London Zoo and walking through the zoo, and a group of, and I'm going to say men, but my memory doesn't really tell me how old they were. They weren't in school uniform or anything. We were all in school uniform. Just grabbed hold of me and groped me, and the thing lasted no more than 2-3 seconds. And yet, I was 11 years old. That lives with me to this day, that men felt empowered to literally grab a school child as she passed,
Especially school
hands
children.
everywhere,
That's it.
and then gone.
I mean, I can't remember the amount of times I've been sexually assaulted in my life in one way or another. I remember somebody flashing me as I was walking into the girls' school. There's a park next to the drive you had to walk up, and men would frequently just stand there with their trousers around their ankles. People would pull up to you in cars, masturbating, and call you over to ask you for directions, so you'd go over and they'd be masturbating. This is not something that is unusual or uncommon. No. I've never once called the police about any single one of my anything that's ever happened to me.
I remember having a haircut once. A man was cutting my hair. I was in my late teens, and he had the scissors and he was doing the front, and his hands were touching my breasts while he was cutting my hair. And I remember thinking, this is really weird. Why does he need to be rubbing my chest while he's cutting my hair? But I didn't feel like I could say anything. I felt a bit paralysed in that moment, stuck in my own head thinking, shall I say something? Will he be offended? Is this okay? Is this not okay? And it's only now, like decades later, that I'm thinking, God almighty, like that could happen to anyone, that could happen to my kids, and I'd want them to shout from the rooftops, don't touch me.
Yeah. We talked a lot about experiences when we were younger women, or when you were younger women, but does being an MP and having a massively powerful public role, does it change it for you?
In one regard, it does stop. So sexual harassment and abuse, people tend not to grope up. You only grope someone who you can sack.
It's true, isn't it?
No, you know, I don't think that's accurate. I've had male MPs stick their hands on my backside in the strangers' bar. I can wind the clock back, and I can remember a really prominent man smacking me on the backside about as hard as he could and go, "Oh, Romsey, you've got a lovely seat."
Oh, gross.
I'd have punched him in the face.
And that's my problem, is that I
who was
didn't
that?
punch
you
Stanley Johnson in the face.
It was Stanley Johnson.
Stanley Johnson did that to me ahead of the 05 election, so it was Blackpool, I don't know what years, 2003.
What did you do?
I didn't do anything. And that I feel ashamed by that.
No, you shouldn't feel ashamed
No,
by that,
you-
because
you were
when I
just
say I'd
shocked
have
in the
punched him in the
moment.
face, that's because I am. And now you probably would. Now you would
Now I
probably say
probably
something.
would.
Let's move on to kind of what you can do as legislators, or what you want to see more of. There's discussions in Parliament about whether or not sexual harassment should actually become a crime. Do you think the government think that this is a priority? What would you like to see happen?
Look, the simple answer is no. It's not a political priority. It's not even a priority just for the Home Office. There needs to be a proper offender strategy and a proper change in how we manage, monitor and criminalise increasing behaviours. So of 100 of the most serious and prolific, dangerous violence against women and girls perpetrators, about 8 of them out of the 100 would currently be being monitored. The others are freely going about abusing other women.
I don't massively disagree with what Jess was saying, but the only thing I'd point out is at the height of the pandemic, the government did prioritise getting the domestic abuse bill back into committee.
Yeah. You all want public sexual harassment to be a crime.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes.
Make public sexual harassment a specific crime. That sends a
Absolutely.
firm message. It also helps you to identify those perpetrators, how can I put this delicately, early on in their offending
Absolutely.
journey.
Yeah.
Because we know, don't we, with Wayne Couzens,
Yes.
that he flashed women before he ever kidnapped, raped and murdered Sarah Everard. So it's all very well and good in the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill to focus on the serious, violent, serial offenders, and important that they serve long sentences, but I want to see us go back and identify people
100%.
at the start.
Is there a cultural problem at the top of government where perhaps politicians aren't quite getting it?
I think government reflects where we are in society. There are some people who really get it and really fight hard for change, and there are people who aren't there yet. But ultimately, we know that convictions aren't where they should be. We know that prevention is not where it should be. We know that all the things we've spoken about today mean that it isn't safe for us and our daughters and our friends to walk the streets. And until we crack down on the perpetrators and until we change our language, so rather than talking about the number of women and girls who've experienced sexual harassment, let's talk about the number of men and boys who are the perpetrators. Let's change the language.
Yeah.
Since the Me Too movement, we have moved on culturally, without question, to know that every single woman has had an experience like this. To know that, we know that. What we haven't done culturally is accepted that if everybody knows a victim, then everybody knows a perpetrator. That's much harder for people to comprehend.
Do you think that in the government that some of the female politicians leading on these strategies get it more than the men? Is that what you find?
Inevitably, women are more engaged and more aware of this because we've all lived with it.
Yeah. Do you feel the fact that we're even here filming this, talking about this, do you feel more hopeful that for our daughters and your sons, that for the next generation, this will improve? Jess, you're nodding your head
look,
at me.
I want to, and I think young women, and I have experienced it, stand up in a way that, you know, every generation I think gets a bit more like, we're not going to tolerate this. But in my time working in it, I've never known systems and services as degraded and as bad as they are today, and so it's quite difficult for me to have hope about it. There's too many women being abused. It's too many. And that level of volume, no government has ever been able to handle it.